Laros's limp form bled glowing azure onto the forest floor, the vicious Zephyrian razor-claw wound slicing to her bones, her breath fading to rattles as the alien lay abandoned to certain death, until human medic Isaac Griffin found her broken body. Patrol had been routine for Isaac, checking sensor relays amid the towering conifers of the Zephyrus wilderness. The only sounds his armored steps and occasional chatter from the 150 human troops guarding the listening post. Then faint whimpers reached his ears. Advancing, rifle raised, he pushed through the dense underbrush into a clearing awash with glowing blue alien blood and shredded turquoise flesh. A lone Idosian female, no older than 25 in Earth years, lay unconscious and gutted, life signs fading. Advanced alien physiology had not saved her from the savage razor-claw ambush. These six-limbed beasts held no fear, armed with molecular sharp claws that parted armor effortlessly and teeth that punched through battle plate. This Idosian had fought bravely, taking 4 with her before falling. Medical streamed from Isaac's dispenser, flesh and veins sealing, bones knitting, stemming the bleeding as he worked feverishly. He applied nanite mesh to the gaping lacerations, sealing her abdominal cavity. Strange glowing marks on her forearms caught his eye, sigils of the Galactic Council, a name spoken only in hushed tones by humans. The Council jealously guarded their dominion of local space and warred ruthlessly with humanity's expansion efforts. A Council soldier on Zephyrus boded ill. "Baseplate, this is Isaac. I need immediate medevac at my position. I've got a critical—" He paused, then continued. "An Idosian female. Multiple lacerations, severe blood loss. She needs surgery, now." "Isaac, this is Baseplate Actual," a gruff voice replied immediately. "Did you say Idosian? Are you insane? The Council will have our asses if we get involved. Let her die." A long pause followed. Then Baseplate replied resignedly, "Dust off inbound, ETA 5 minutes. I hope you know what you're doing, Isaac. Baseplate out." Isaac exhaled, prepping an IV and fluid line. Humanity had to be better than this. Saving this wounded alien could change everything. "Hang on," he whispered as the medevac whirred nearby. "We've got you." The whir of engines filled the air as the extraction team touched down in the clearing, the dropship's ramp lowering to reveal 2 human medics and a hovering AI unit. Isaac waved them over urgently, carefully lifting Laros's limp form with the help of John Hawkins and Sarah Chen. They secured her to a stretcher, the Zelniger AI Zeta-9 scanning her vital signs. "BP 60/40, heart rate 140, respiration shallow," Zeta-9 reported in a synthetic voice. "Significant blood loss. Immediate transfusion required." Isaac nodded grimly as they loaded Laros into the dropship. "I've got ONEG blood packs in my kit. Start a line." The medics worked quickly, inserting IVs and applying pressure bandages as the ship lifted off. Isaac monitored Laros's pulse, willing it to stabilize. Zeta-9 administered a cocktail of human medicines tailored to Idosian physiology by its vast xenobiological database. The flight passed in tense silence, broken only by the beeping of monitors and soft commands from the medics. As they touched down at the base, a trauma team rushed out to meet them, led by Dr. Michael Nguyen. "Or-1 prepped and ready," Dr. Nguyen said briskly, helping transfer Laros to a gurney. "Let's move, people." Isaac watched as they wheeled Laros away, her life in the hands of human doctors light years from Earth. He paced the hallway outside the operating room, minutes turning to hours as he waited for news. 6 hours later, Dr. Nguyen emerged, surgical mask dangling around his neck. "She's stable," he said wearily, "but she's got a long road ahead. Lacerations to multiple organs, severe blood loss. She's lucky you found her when you did." Isaac sagged with relief. "Can I see her?" Dr. Nguyen nodded. "Room 3, she's sedated, but you can sit with her." Isaac entered the dimly lit recovery room, sinking into a chair beside Laros's bed. She lay still, swathed in bandages, monitors beeping softly. Isaac's gaze drifted to the strange glowing sigils on her forearms. What did they mean? What was her connection to the Council? Suddenly Laros stirred, eyes fluttering open. Her gaze locked onto Isaac's, confusion and fear flickering across her face. "Vanguard," she whispered hoarsely, the galactic standard word hanging in the air. Before Isaac could respond, Laros's eyes slid shut, her body going limp as the sedatives pulled her back under. Isaac leaned back in his chair, mind racing. Vanguard. What did it mean? And what would the Council do when they learned one of their own was in human hands? As Laros lay recovering in the medbay, her vitals slowly stabilizing, Isaac pored over the base's xenolinguistic archives in his off hours. The word Vanguard echoed in his mind. He had to know what it meant. Late one night, tucked away in a corner of the database room, he found it. An ancient Prothean artifact lost for millennia. The Vanguard, a repository of unimaginable technology and knowledge. The Galactic Council had sought it for centuries, but their search had been stymied at every turn by the Shadal, a shadowy race hell-bent on claiming the Vanguard's secrets for themselves. Isaac's heart raced. Laros was more than a soldier. She was a key to unlocking a mystery that could change the course of galactic history. A chime sounded. An urgent message from Commander Ethan Walker flashed on Isaac's datapad. "All personnel to battle stations. Shadal warship detected entering Zephyrus space. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Isaac sprinted through the corridors, boots pounding on metal decks. He had to get to Laros, had to keep her safe. He skidded to a halt outside the medbay. Laros's bed was empty, sheets thrown back. A note lay on the pillow, written in Galactic Standard. "I must complete my mission. The fate of the galaxy depends on it. Thank you for saving my life, Isaac. May our paths cross again under better circumstances." Isaac's blood ran cold. Laros was gone, her body still weak from her brush with death. She had slipped away to draw the Shadal's fire, to keep the humans out of harm's way. Alarms blared through the base as Isaac raced for the armory. He had to find her, had to help her complete her mission. The Vanguard couldn't fall into Shadal hands. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Isaac would be damned if he let Laros face that threat alone. Isaac snatched his pulse rifle from the rack, slinging the strap over his shoulder. He grabbed medpacks, stuffing them into his belt pouches alongside bandages, antiseptic and coagulants. His fingers flew over the portable tracker, calibrating it to Laros's Edosian biosignature. He sprinted out the blast doors into the looming conifers of the Zephyrian forest. Massive trunks soared hundreds of feet overhead, blocking the twin moons. Isaac flicked on his headlamp, sweeping the undergrowth. He knelt, examining a splash of luminous blue blood on a fern. Laros was close. The tracker pinged softly. Isaac pushed through the dense foliage following the signal. Broken branches and more blood marked her passage. She was moving erratically, her injuries slowing her down. A louder ping sounded from the tracker. Isaac looked up to see a yawning cave mouth ahead, half hidden by vines. He ducked inside, rifle raised. The tracker flashed urgently. 20 meters. 10. Rounding a boulder, he saw her. Laros lay crumpled on the damp stone, a strange green device clutched in her hand. Isaac rushed to her side, pulling out his med scanner. Her pulse was thready, breathing weak. The device pulsed with an eerie emerald light. "Vanguard," Laros whispered. "The key." Isaac's scanner warbled a warning. The device was emitting a powerful field, interfering with Laros's Edosian healing factor. He had to get her away from it. Gently, he lifted Laros into his arms, carrying her deeper into the cave. Laying her down, he pulled out an IV bag, hanging it from a rocky outcropping. He inserted the needle into her arm, then applied a coagulant gel to her reopened wounds. Laros's eyes fluttered open. "Isaac, you shouldn't have come. The Shadal." A thunderous boom shook the cave. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The whine of energy weapons echoed from the entrance. "No time to argue," Isaac said, helping Laros to her feet. "We need to move now." Supporting Laros with one arm, pulse rifle in the other, Isaac plunged deeper into the labyrinthine cave system as the sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them. The Shadal had found their trail. and they would stop at nothing to claim the vanguard for themselves. Pulse rifle at the ready, Isaac followed Laros deeper into the labyrinthine cave system. Their headlamps pierced the darkness, casting long shadows on the glistening rock walls. As they approached the alcove, a soft green glow caught Isaac's eye. 4 oblong pods, each large enough to hold a humanoid figure, lined the walls. Laros gasped. "Prothean stasis pods," she whispered reverently. "They must have hidden here during the fall of their empire." Isaac scanned the pods with his med scanner. Life signs stable. Looks like they're in some kind of cryogenic suspension. Laros gripped his arm. "We have to wake them. They might know where the vanguard is." Isaac hesitated. Reviving an unknown alien species was risky at best, but the Shadal were closing in. They had no choice. "All right," he said. "I'll do my best." Isaac interfaced his med scanner with the pod's control panels, carefully adjusting the revival sequence. One by one, the pods hissed open, wisps of freezing mist curling outwards. 4 tall, slender figures emerged, their green-hued skin glistening in the dim light. The leader, a male with piercing yellow eyes, stepped forward. "I am Yavik," he said in perfect galactic standard. "We are the last of the Prothean Order tasked with protecting the vanguard." Laros bowed deeply. "Honored Yavik, we seek the vanguard to keep it from Shadal hands." Isaac's scanner pinged urgently. "Shadal signals approaching fast. We need to move." The group raced towards the artifact chamber, Havik in the lead. As they reached the ancient device, a thunderous explosion rocked the cave. Shadal commandos poured through the breach, energy rifles blazing. "Take cover," Isaac yelled, shoving Laros behind a boulder. He laid down suppressing fire, pulse rounds ricocheting off the Shadal's kinetic barriers. Havik placed his hand on the artifact. It thrummed to life, glowing with an intense emerald light. Isaac looked around desperately. They were trapped between the advancing Shadal and a sheer rock wall. There was no way out. "Vanguard located," a harsh voice echoed from the Shadal line. "This is Commander Kalrigar. Surrender the artifact or die." Isaac gritted his teeth. They had minutes, maybe less, before the Shadal overwhelmed their position. The fate of the galaxy hung by a thread. They had come too far to fail now. Isaac tightened his grip on his rifle, mind racing. There had to be a way, there had to be. The Shadal pressed forward, their ranks parting to reveal a towering figure in midnight black armor. Commander Kalrigar himself, a look of cruel triumph on his alien features. He took a deep breath, finger tightening on the trigger. One way or another, this ended here. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the next few seconds, in the depths of a forgotten cave on a distant alien world. It was time to make their stand. Isaac's mind raced as the Shadal soldiers advanced, pulse rifles spitting deadly energy bolts. He glanced at the cave walls, recalling the geological scans he had studied earlier. The rock strata were weak at key points, vulnerable to controlled detonations. "Go," Isaac urged, unslinging a pack of explosives from his shoulder. "I'll be right behind you." Havik nodded grimly, gathering the Protheans. "We will not forget your sacrifice, human." As the others retreated deeper into the caves, Isaac set to work, fingers flying over the explosive charges. He placed them at critical junctures, priming the detonators with quick, precise movements. The Shadal pushed forward, Kalrigar's cruel laughter echoing off the stone. "Foolish human, you only delay the inevitable." Isaac thumbed the detonator. "Delay this." The charges exploded in a cascading series of blasts, the cavern shaking with the force of the explosions. Rock and debris rained down, separating Isaac from the Shadal in a wall of rubble. But Kalrigar was quick, darting through the falling stone, his elite warriors at his heels. Pulse rifle fire filled the air, searing the rock around Isaac as he dove for cover. Isaac returned fire, his aim steady, his training kicking in. 2 Shadal fell, then 3, but more poured through the gap, pressing the attack. A bolt seared Isaac's shoulder, the pain sharp and hot. He gritted his teeth, forcing it aside. He had to hold the line, had to give Laros and the others time to escape. The firefight raged. the confined space of the cave amplifying every shot, every shout. Isaac moved from cover to cover, using the terrain to his advantage, taking down Shadal warriors with precise bursts of pulse fire. But they kept coming, an unrelenting tide of armored bodies and alien weaponry. Isaac's rifle grew hot in his hands, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was running out of time, running out of options. Above, Laros and the Protheans emerged into the cool night air, the twin moons casting an eerie glow over the forest. Havoc pointed to a cliffside, barely visible through the dense foliage. They raced to the ancient craft, Laros cradling the Vanguard component close to her chest. But as Havoc powered up the shuttle's systems, Laros paused, her heart wrenching at the thought of Isaac, alone in the depths, facing certain death. "I have to go back," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I can't leave him." Havoc's eyes met hers, a mix of understanding and urgency in their yellow depths. "Go. We will secure the Vanguard, but hurry." Laros nodded, passing the component to the Prothean leader. Then she turned, racing back into the darkness of the caves, her heart pounding in time with her footsteps. She had to find Isaac, had to save him as he had saved her. The thought of losing him, of never seeing his kind eyes and gentle smile again, was too much to bear. Laros plunged into the labyrinthine tunnels, her Edosian senses guiding her through the gloom. The sound of pulse fire grew louder, the acrid scent of ozone and burnt rock filling the air. She was close, but so were the Shadal, and time was running out. In the depths of the cave, Isaac fired his last shot, the pulse rifle clicking empty in his hands. He was out of ammo, out of options. The Shadal closed in, Kal Riga's laughter ringing in his ears. "Nowhere to run, human," the commander gloated. "Nowhere to hide." Isaac rose from behind his boulder, raising his hands in surrender. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "I've got nowhere to go." Kal Riga aimed his rifle at Isaac's heart, finger tightening on the trigger. Any last words? He dove to the side as a pulse grenade, primed and ready, fell from his hand to land at Kal Riga's feet. The commander's eyes widened in shock and rage. The grenade detonated, the blast wave throwing Isaac back against the cavern wall. His head slammed against the stone, stars exploding across his vision. As he slipped into unconsciousness, he thought he heard a voice calling his name, familiar and desperate, but the darkness claimed him, and he knew no more. Laros burst into the cavern, her heart leaping into her throat at the sight of Isaac's crumpled form. Shadal bodies littered the ground, Kal Riga's armor a smoking ruin. She raced to Isaac's side, cradling his head in her lap. "Isaac, Isaac, can you hear me?" As she carried him through the winding tunnels, towards the surface and the waiting Prothean shuttle, Laros whispered a silent prayer to the spirits of her ancestors. "Hold on, Isaac," she murmured, her voice choked with emotion. "Just hold on, I've got you." Darkness pressed in on Isaac from all sides, the weight of the cavern bearing down like a living, malicious entity. Kal Riga's laughter echoed off the stone, a sound of cruel triumph. Isaac's pulse hammered in his ears as he faced the towering Shadal commander, a dozen elite warriors at his back. "Your time is up, human," Kal Riga snarled, leveling his pulse rifle at Isaac's chest. "The Vanguard will be ours." Isaac's grip tightened on the hilt of his combat knife, his last line of defense. He set his jaw, ready to meet his fate head-on. But even as Kal Riga's finger tightened on the trigger, a flash of turquoise and silver burst from the shadows. Laros, twin Prothean energy blades humming in her hands, leapt into the fray with a fierce battle cry. The blades sliced through the air, parting Shadal armor like paper. Isaac surged forward, renewed strength flooding his veins. They fought back to back, human and Edosian, a whirlwind of steel and fury. Isaac's knife found the gaps in Shadal plate, spilling viscous green blood on the stone. Laros danced between the warriors, her blades a blur of light, leaving severed limbs and smoking wounds in her wake. Kal Riga roared in rage, firing wildly. Pulse bolts ricocheted off the cavern walls, filling the air with the stench of ozone. Isaac ducked and rolled, coming up behind the commander, He lashed out with his knife, the blade skittering across Kalrigar's armored gauntlet. The Shadal commander spun, a vicious backhand sending Isaac sprawling. But Laros was there, energy blades screaming. She locked Kalrigar's rifle between the blades, wrenching it from his grasp with a twist of her wrists. The weapon clattered to the ground as Laros pressed the attack, driving the commander back with a flurry of slashes. Across the cavern, a hulking Shadal warrior loomed over Isaac, a wicked-looking battle-axe gripped in his massive fists. Thaxcor, Kalrigar's second-in-command, a mountain of muscle and malice. He brought the axe down in a thunderous overhead chop, the blade sparking against the stone as Isaac rolled aside. Isaac scrambled to his feet, knife in hand. He feinted left, then darted right, sliding beneath Thaxcor's guard. The knife plunged into the warrior's side, finding the seam between armored plates. Thaxcor bellowed in pain, his backhand catching Isaac across the jaw, sending him flying. Stars exploded across Isaac's vision as he hit the ground hard. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. Thaxcor loomed above him, axe raised for the killing blow. But Laros was there, a blur of turquoise. Her energy blade sliced clean through Thaxcor's wrist, severing his hand at the joint. The axe tumbled from nerveless fingers as the warrior howled in agony. Laros spun, her second blade taking him in the throat, silencing his cries forever. Kalrigar, seeing his lieutenant fall, bellowed in rage. He charged at Laros, a crackling energy sword leaping to life in his hand. Their blades met in a shower of sparks, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the cavern. Isaac staggered to his feet, bleeding from a dozen wounds. He watched as Laros and Kalrigar dueled, energy blades flashing in the gloom. They were evenly matched, the Shadal commander's raw strength against Laros's lightning speed. But Laros was tiring, her wounds sapping her strength. Kalrigar pressed the attack, his blade slipping past her guard, scoring a glancing blow across her ribs. Laros stumbled, her energy blade flickering. Isaac leapt forward, his knife flashing. He caught Kalrigar's swordarm at the elbow, the blade sinking deep. The Shadal commander roared in pain, his sword clattering to the ground. Laros surged forward, her remaining energy blade sinking into Kalrigar's chest, piercing his heart. The commander's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening in a silent scream. He crumpled to the ground, green blood pooling around his still form. The remaining Shadal soldiers, seeing their leaders fall, turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows of the caves. Isaac and Laros stood amid the carnage, chests heaving, weapons slick with blood. "We did it," Laros said, her voice ragged. "We beat them." Isaac nodded, too exhausted to speak. He reached out, clasping Laros's hand in his own. Together they turned towards the exit, ready to leave the nightmares of the caves behind. But as they emerged into the cool night air, a sound stopped them dead in their tracks. The distant thunder of orbital bombardment, the unmistakable sound of a Shadal warship unleashing its fury on the human base. Isaac's comm crackled to life, Commander Walker's voice tight with tension. "Isaac, Laros, if you can hear me, the Shadal have begun their attack. We're under heavy fire from orbit. You need to get to the Prothean shuttle now. We can't hold out much longer." Isaac met Laros's gaze, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. They knew what they had to do. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Together they raced into the night, towards the hidden Prothean shuttle and the desperate hope of salvation. The ground shook beneath their feet, the sky ablaze with the fires of war. The battle for Zephyrus had begun, and the fate of the Vanguard and the galaxy itself rested on their shoulders. Isaac and Laros burst into the clearing, the Prothean shuttle a beacon of hope amid the chaos. Yavik emerged from the open hatch, the Vanguard component clutched tightly in his hands. "Thank the spirits you made it," Laros gasped, her eyes scanning the tree line for signs of pursuit. Havik's brow furrowed. "We must hurry, the Shadal will not be far behind." Isaac raced up the ramp, his heart sinking as he took in the shuttle's darkened control panels. "The power cells are drained. We're not going anywhere unless we can recharge them." Havik nodded grimly. "I feared as much. 50,000 years is a long time for any technology to remain idle. Isaac's mind raced, his gaze falling on the pulse rifle slung across his back. The power packs in our weapons. If we can rig them to the shuttle systems... It might just work, Havik finished, a glimmer of hope in his yellow eyes. As Laros and the other Protheans took up defensive positions around the clearing, Isaac and Javik set to work, prying open access panels and carefully connecting the weapon power cells to the shuttle's energy grid. Isaac's hands flew over the unfamiliar Prothean controls, sweat beading on his brow. One wrong move, one misaligned connection, and they'd be trapped on this world at the mercy of the Shadal. A shout from outside the shuttle broke his concentration. Laros, her voice tight with urgency. Incoming! Shadal dropship on the horizon! Isaac cursed under his breath, redoubling his efforts. They were out of time. The sound of energy weapons fire filled the air as Laros and the Protheans engaged the Shadal forces. The ground shook with the impact of plasma bolts, the acrid scent of ozone mingling with the sharp tang of burning foliage. Almost there, Havik said, his fingers a blur as he wired the Vanguard component into the shuttle's power systems. The ancient artifact pulsed with an eerie green light, its energy flowing into the dormant Prothean technology. With a final, desperate twist of a connector, Isaac stepped back, his heart pounding in his throat. The shuttle's control panels flickered, then blazed to life, the hum of the engines filling the air. "It's working," Isaac shouted, a grin splitting his face. Havik clapped him on the shoulder, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well done, human. Now let's get out of here." They raced down the ramp, energy bolts sizzling past their heads as they joined the fray. Laros and the Protheans were holding their own, but the Shadal forces were relentless, pushing forward with single-minded determination. Isaac shouldered his rifle, picking off a Shadal soldier with a well-placed shot. Beside him, Laros danced between the enemy ranks, her Prothean energy blades a whirlwind of destruction. "Fall back to the shuttle," Havik commanded, his voice cutting through the din of battle. They fought their way up the ramp, the Shadal hot on their heels. Isaac slammed his fist on the hatch controls, the door sliding shut just as a plasma bolt sizzled past his ear. A barrage of plasma bolts rocked the shuttle, alarms blaring in the cockpit. Isaac gripped the back of Havik's seat, his knuckles white. "Hang on," Havik shouted, wrenching the controls hard to port. The shuttle banked sharply, the inertial dampeners struggling to compensate. Isaac's stomach lurched as they rocketed towards the stars, the Shadal dropship falling away behind them. For a moment, silence reigned in the cockpit, broken only by the ragged sound of their breathing. Then Laros spoke, her voice soft with relief. "We did it. We actually did it." Isaac met her gaze, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. They had the Vanguard, they had each other, and for now, that was enough. But as the shuttle hurtled through the void, the Shadal warship looming in the distance, Isaac knew their fight was far from over. The fate of the galaxy still hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could tip the scales. The real battle was just beginning. The Prothean shuttle shook violently as it hurtled through the Zephyrus system, Shadal plasma fire impacting its kinetic barriers. In the cockpit, Isaac and Javik worked frantically to plot a course to the Citadel, their fingers flying over the ancient controls. "Shields down to 60%, Laros shouted from the weapons console, her hands locked around the firing grips. "We can't take much more of this." Isaac gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his brow as he wrenched the shuttle into a sharp dive. The Shadal warship loomed on the viewscreen, its massive hull bristling with gun batteries. "Havik, I need those coordinates now," Isaac yelled, rolling the shuttle to avoid another salvo of plasma. The Prothean's hands raced across the navigational interface, ancient symbols flashing on the display. "Inputting Citadel coordinates. Done. Engaging mass relay drive on your mark." Isaac nodded, his eyes locked on the approaching mass relay, a colossal structure of twisting metal and pulsing energy. "Laros, give that warship something to think about." Laros grinned fiercely, her fingers tightening on the triggers. "With pleasure." A volley of incandescent Prothean energy torpedoes leapt from the shuttle's launcher, streaking towards the Shadal vessel. The warship's point defense lasers flared to life, intercepting some of the projectiles, but several found their mark, slamming into the enemy's engines in a cascade of explosions. The Shadal ship listed heavily, trailing smoke and debris as it fell behind. A ragged cheer erupted from the Protheans, but Isaac kept his focus on the mass relay ahead. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the mass relay's field, the cockpit filling with a blinding blue light. Isaac felt his stomach lurch as the shuttle was catapulted across the galaxy, the stars blurring into streaks of white. Moments later, they emerged from the relay jump, the massive form of the Citadel filling the view screen. Isaac let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his hands shaking slightly on the controls. Beside him, Laros reached out, her fingers gently brushing his. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. They had made it this far together, against all odds, and together they would see this mission through to the end, no matter the cost. As the Prothean shuttle glided towards the Citadel's docking bay, Isaac and Laros knew that their fight was far from over. But with the Vanguard component in hand, and a newfound bond forged in the crucible of battle, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the Prothean shuttle glided into the Citadel's docking bay, Isaac, Laros, Javik, and the other Protheans stepped out onto the gleaming platform, the Vanguard component securely in their grasp. A contingent of Galactic Council representatives, resplendent in their formal attire, awaited them with a mixture of anticipation and relief etched on their faces. But before the handoff could be completed, a thunderous explosion tore through the docking bay, sending metal and debris flying in all directions. Flames licked at the walls as acrid smoke filled the air. From the billowing clouds of black, a heavily armed Shadal strike team emerged, their weapons trained on the shocked assembly. At their head strode a figure Isaac and Laros had hoped never to see again, Kalrigar, his armor scorched and battered, but his eyes burning with a fierce determination. In the chaos that followed, Kalrigar's soldiers surged forward, their pulse rifles spitting deadly energy bolts. Galactic Council members fell, their cries of pain and terror mingling with the harsh bark of Shadal weaponry. Isaac and Laros leapt into action, their own weapons drawn as Havik and the Protheans formed a protective circle around the Vanguard component. But the Shadal were too swift, too ruthless. In a flurry of motion, they cut down the remaining Council representatives and seized the artifact, disappearing into the smoke-filled corridors of the Citadel. Without hesitation, Isaac, Laros, and Havik gave chase, plunging into the labyrinthine heart of the massive space station. The sounds of battle echoed through the halls as they engaged the Shadal in a brutal close-quarters firefight, pulse rounds scorching the walls and ricocheting off metal surfaces. They fought their way through the twisting passages, the Shadal falling back before their relentless advance. But Kalrigar was always one step ahead, leading them deeper and deeper into the Citadel's core. At last, they cornered the Shadal commander on a narrow bridge spanning a vast chasm, the Citadel's central power core pulsing with energy far below. Isaac and Laros confronted Kalrigar, their weapons locked on his armored form. "It's over, Kalrigar," Isaac shouted over the hum of the power core. "Hand over the Vanguard component." The Shadal commander laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You still don't understand, do you? We're not here to use the Vanguard's power. We're here to destroy it." "Because it's too dangerous," Kalrigar snarled. "No species should possess technology that advanced. It will only lead to ruin." With a swift motion, he pulled the Vanguard component from his belt, his fingers flying over its surface. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "No," Isaac screamed, realizing the Shadal's intention. "He's activated a self-destruct sequence." Kalrigar's mandibles twisted in a cruel grin. "If we can't have the Vanguard, no one can, and now it will take the Citadel with it." Time seemed to slow as Isaac processed the gravity of the situation. The Vanguard component, the key to unlocking ancient Prothean technology, was now a ticking bomb primed to destroy the very heart of galactic civilization. In that split second, Isaac made his choice. With a wordless cry, he launched himself at Kal Riegar, tackling the Shadal commander with all his strength. The two grappled on the narrow bridge. The Vanguard component clutched between them. Laros watched in horror as they teetered on the edge, the power core's light casting eerie shadows across their straining forms. And then, with a final, desperate heave, Isaac and Kal Riegar toppled over the side, plummeting into the pulsing energy below. A scream tore from Laros's throat as a blinding flash erupted from the core, the Vanguard component disintegrating in a burst of searing light. The shockwave threw her back, the world spinning into darkness. When she awoke, it was to a changed galaxy. The Citadel still stood, but the Vanguard and the man who had given everything to protect it were gone. In the Grand Council chambers, Laros stood before the assembled representatives, a medal of honor clutched in her trembling hands. They spoke of Isaac's bravery, his selfless sacrifice in the face of unimaginable odds. They hailed him as a hero, a shining example of all that was good and true in the galaxy. But as Laros stood there, the weight of her loss threatening to crush her, she knew that Isaac had been more than a hero. He had been her friend, her partner, her guiding light in the darkness. And though he was gone, his memory would live on, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that desperately needed it. Laros closed her eyes, whispering a final promise to the man who had changed her life forever. I will never forget what you taught me, Isaac, that even in the darkest of times there is always hope, as long as there are those willing to fight for it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.